Alright, I've talked about my favorite movies from the summer of 2015. Now it's time to talk about my worst. This time the list is only 10 because there isn't a lot of summer movies that I really hated. In fact, a lot of the movies that I hated or thought were just more two-star worthy were towards March, April, and January. And even with some of my dishonorable mentions, there's still two movies that I ultimately still gave 3 stars to. So there isn't a lot of movies that I absolutely hate. Alright, a few honorable mentions that I might as well point out are Pixels, Terminator Genisys, which I gave both of those two films 3 stars ultimately. And the only dishonorable mention to have less than 3 stars, Aloha. Kicking off the worst films of summer for 2015 for me is number 10, The Gallows. Now ultimately I still gave this a 2.5 star. It still has potential and I still have a fondness for found footage films. I haven't been too tired of found footage films because I still go in there hoping that there's at least a few more gems in that genre. The Gallows could have been that gem if it hadn't been for the ending, and that's the only reason I gave it 2.5 is because the ending was horrible. And it's not the ending, it's the final scene. The final scene was cliched, horrible, the worst part of the movie, and unfortunately just brings it down to 2.5. My number 9 is another 2.5 film, which is Fantastic Four. A lot of people absolutely hate this. Totally understand. It doesn't mesh with any of the core audience that it's supposed to go for, and there's a bit of a mess tonally because part of the movie felt like it needed to be sci-fi body horror, and you can see pure amazing glimpses of that in 2 of the scenes. Unfortunately, the rest of it felt like it was trying to be your typical Marvel movie but not working and being way too cheesy. And so ultimately I gave it 2.5 because I could see potential in it. I can see what it used to be and what it should have been to begin with if it wasn't for studio involvement and a bunch of other people just pretty much messing up the project. My number 8 is Poltergeist, and I think I gave this a higher score before in my review, but it's gone down a few last time I looked at it. It's just a bad remake, and there's glimpses of the original in it. It's just more like here's the compilation of what was best in the first one. We'll just put it in this remake, but make it really short and try to mesh it up into what nowadays PG-13 horror films are like, rather than what PG horror was the original Poltergeist. It's not as bold, and it's really bad CGI, and there's a lot of good ideas in it, a lot of neat modernization that I do appreciate in the film, but in the end it's just not anywhere near as amazing as the original was. My number 7 is Agent 47, and I just reviewed this not too long ago, so I'm not going to go too much into detail. Just check that review out. I think that was the last review that I just did. My number 6 is currently, no, not really. It's the second worst animated film that I've seen so far this year. Unfortunately, I'm not going to mention my worst because it's not out in the US yet. It's not out until December. It was supposed to come out in summer. So I'm not going to talk about that film, even though I have seen the Spanish version of it. Anyway, my number 6 is Minions. I just really wanted to like it. Half of the movie I did enjoy, but then eventually it just sort of got old and it just got boring. My number 5 is a sequel to a film that I originally liked until I got forced into watching it several hundred times, and my number 5 just feels like a ripoff of this original, and it is Pitch Perfect 2. There's not a lot of new things going on in Pitch Perfect 2. There's one subplot, and that's about it. Everything else is completely the same as the original. So if you like the original and you haven't seen it too much to the point where you're fed up with it, then yeah, you'll probably like Pitch Perfect 2. But I was fed up with the original so much that when I saw Pitch Perfect 2, I was fed up with it even more, and It's awful for me. My number 4 is Paul Blart Mall Cop 2. I actually am a fan of the first one. I wouldn't say it's great, but I loved that it was a little bit of a parody of Die Hard. Paul Blart Mall Cop 2 is nothing near that. There is some moments I did enjoy, there are some moments that I laughed, but ultimately it just felt like a more loud, more obnoxious version of the first one, which is sad. Number 3 is a film that I probably would have liked if it wasn't for the fact that it's supposed to be based off of a totally different franchise. Vacation. Yeah, I could have liked this movie. I see moments where I would have laughed and would have found it was funny, but the problem is it's supposed to be based off of Vacation, and the comedy in this Vacation is nothing like any of the previous films. It's too much like modern comedy is nowadays, and it doesn't have the same magic as the original or Christmas Vacation. Vacation is just ultimately a We're the Millers 2, and if that was the case, I would have actually liked it. Unfortunately, it's based off Vacation, so I don't like it. Number 2, I'm not going to talk too much about because I just reviewed this one as well. My number 2 is Sinister 2. Oh God, it was frickin' awful. At least Vacation got a 1 star. Sinister 2 got a half a star for me. It's still way better than Hot Tub Time Machine 2, which is more like a quarter star, if that. But it's still, Sinister 2 is awful, and they really shouldn't have made a sequel. Okay, my number 1 worst film of the summer of 2015 is still my worst film of the year 2015. It is Hot Pursuit. What a hot mess. Funny. This summer has brought me my favorite movie of 2015 and my worst movie of 2015. I don't want to talk too much about this god-awful film. It is the only film this year so far that I've given absolute 0 stars to. There was nothing comedic about it, nothing I liked, nothing I cared about. There was a twist that could have been good if it wasn't for the fact that the rest of the film just sucked so much. Hot Pursuit, don't waste your time. It is the worst film of 2015 in my opinion. So that was my worst films of the summer of 2015. Go ahead and comment what is your worst films you've seen this year during summer. As always, this is Bruce Gifford, and this was Just My Opinion.